What is going on, everybody? Soliday Holiday here, and today I'm going to be starting a 0 to Hero Mythic Plus challenge. We're going to be playing a Ret Paladin and attempting to get the Keystone Master achievement. So I've honestly never made World of Warcraft videos before, and I haven't made videos on this channel for years, but recently I've been playing a lot of WoW and I wanted to make some videos and have some fun with it. I would first like to say, if you have not checked out Dillison's Keystone Master series, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's honestly, his videos are awesome and he's my inspiration to do these videos in the first place. That being said, let's talk about what we want to do on this challenge. What we are going to be doing is starting with a fresh new character. I'm going to be pugging my way to Keystone Hero, and if you guys like the series, we may even try to push past Keystone Hero and try to go for 3,000 IO. A little bit of background about me. I've been playing WoW since Wrath of the Lich King. But dragonflight is the first time that I've actually pushed and tried to beat in-game content, right? I think the only time that I've really pushed in-game content was back in Kata, and I think I defeated Deathwing on normal, and that's all that I've ever really done. That being said, season 3 of Dragonflight is also the first time that I have been able to achieve the Keystone Master. I actually did this on my Warlock. He's my main. And lately I've been pushing keys and I've honestly been having so much fun. It's probably the most fun that I've been having in WoW. Now that you know a little bit about me, let's get into the rules of this challenge, right? Everything I do on this series will be on this character. So I will not trade gold or anything else from other characters. I have removed this character from my Raider IO profile so that way no one can see my actual IO. I can use my keys or apply for a group. Doesn't really matter. I'm down for either one of those. I will not have guildmates or friends or anything like that help me on this challenge, but then again, I'd have to have friends that played WoW in the first place, right? I also have a Twitch channel that I plan to begin streaming on, so if you want to go check it out or if you want to give it a follow, I plan on streaming later on in the night. So all this being said, I have very little to no experience with Ret Paladins. The only experience that I really do have with Paladins is I leveled this character up to level 60 last expansion, and that was as a prot. The spec is going to be brand new for me, and I haven't played a melee DPS in years, so the role is also going to be new for me. So any tips that you guys have, I would love to see them in the comments, and I would greatly appreciate any help. So our hero or master or whatever you want a character is going to be a Zandalaria Paladin named Solly. Solly is currently at level 63, and I started leveling him a little bit before this video to get it a little bit prepared, right? So to start out with the leveling, I figured I wanted to check out this new follower dungeon that you can do. If you're not aware, Blizzard has released a new type of dungeon that you're able to access at level 60, and what these dungeons allow you to do is they allow you to play with AI teammates. So you can do this to try out your spec or try out new things if you want to. So these dungeons are actually like super cool, is that you can, it's especially great for new players if you're just getting into the game, and I think that Blizzard's trying to make WoW a little bit more new player friendly. But it's really cool. It's got this button that you can press so that way they're going to lead, or you can follow them, or they'll follow you and let you initiate the polls and all that kind of stuff. And it was pretty cool. And they actually give you like little hints, like at the beginning of Algathar Academy, where they tell you to choose a buff so that way you don't forget. So we're going through the dungeon, and I tried to see how they would deal with me pulling extra, right? And I just immediately died. And I tried to fight the first boss, and tank let me take aggro for a long time, and then I actually did switch the follower to lead, and thankfully the tank did finally take aggro. And so we just kept going through the dungeon for a little bit, but it's definitely cool to have, but without a doubt it's a tool for beginners or someone that just wanted to hit that specific dungeon really quickly. But it is very slow paced, and I felt like I was the only one doing damage, so I just got out of there, and I didn't really want to continue on with that dungeon. After we got out of the follower dungeon, we actually did a time rift just because I'm still trying to collect all of the appearances and mounts and everything for my main. It was nothing crazy, but we did actually level up to 64 from it, which was nice. We then did some world quests and a whole bunch of quest lines and a bunch of dungeons, and we did Netharius, we did an Alcathar Academy, and if on here you can see the difference between the follower dungeon. I know I didn't play a lot of the footage from the follower dungeon, but it was boring to do, so it's going to be boring to watch, but you can see the difference between the follower dungeon and the regular. on the regular normal dungeon, I actually felt like there was more people than just me doing damage, and I actually felt like we were actually pushing through the dungeon super quick, and it just shows the difference between the two. We then stayed with that group, and we actually did a couple more dungeons, and eventually we hit level 70. After hitting level 70, we went to the Emerald Dream, and once we got to the Emerald Dream, my first thing that I did is I completed the Ally of the Dream Warden's quest, and we actually got a 441 wrist from that drop, which was awesome. And then from there, we went and we queued up with a group, and we killed the world boss. And thankfully, I don't know, I don't think I've ever gotten a drop from the world boss itself. And on this character, I don't know if streamer privilege is real or what, but I actually got a 460 neck that dropped from the world boss. I was super freaking excited. I couldn't believe it. As you can see, it one-shot me because my gear was so horrible, but we did end up, after I died, the group ended up killing it, so we got that drop. We then did some world quest and some quest lines in the Emerald Dream to just try to get up to a base of 415 item level. We did do the Super Bloom, which actually ended up giving me a 447 cloak. And then at this time I remembered, I was like, hey, we did the Rift earlier, and I could use the weekly drop from the Rift to get another item. So I went to the vendor and I actually bought a trinket from the Rift. We then completed the climbing gear world quest, so that way we could get a 418 trinket. The only thing that was left at this point was I needed to replace one ring to get up to at very least base 415 item level. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get this? I can run some heroics and hope to get a ring, anything like that. I can't queue for LFR without at least having this ring replaced. But then I remembered that the Dream Surge event was going on, and I was about halfway done with that at this point, just from doing the quest to get up to level 70. So we ended up running around killing a bunch of rares, and actually on the last rare, a ring actually dropped from that boss, which was awesome. And so what that allowed me to do is turn in the weekly quest for the Dream Surge, and I was actually able to buy a new weapon, which was a little bit of an upgrade, nothing crazy, but a little bit of an upgrade that would help out. So once we replaced that ring, we were sitting at a 426 item level, which allowed us to finally queue for LFR. We got into the first stage of LFR, and I tried to spend this time to really learn how to do the rotation and build the muscle memory for the rotation. I think that I'm definitely gonna have to rearrange some buttons because it feels a little awkward right now for me, just based off of just how it's running. The rotation seems pretty simple. I just probably need to do a little bit more research and try to figure out the best way to min-max it, I guess, right? Because I don't know whether to build up Holy Power to 5 or stop at 4 and then spend it, or stop at 3 and spend it, right? And I need to figure out what's just going to be best, right? Everything was going really well with the group, and we didn't really have any problems. We killed Gnarl Root without any issues, but sadly no loot dropped that I was able to use. We then killed Agira the Cruel with no issues, and once again, sadly no loot dropped for us. We then killed Smolderon, and actually a two-handed sword dropped, but sadly I wasn't even close to winning the roll on it. So I guess streamer privilege isn't everything at this point, but a man can hope, right? At this point, I was going to run another LFR to just see if we could get any loot drop, and also I wanted to fill up that those 3 chances at the end of the week for the weekly vault, right? But I figured I might as well hop over to the dungeon finder and see if anybody was running any lower key dungeons. And thankfully, and somehow someone was running a +2 Everbloom. I requested a join, and I did get in, which was awesome. While on the Everbloom, I was pretty proud of my DPS. I was consistently on the higher end of the meter, which was pretty cool, especially with all the big pulls for the AoE. One thing that I know that I'm going to have to get used to is I'm going to have to get used to the 15-second interrupt timer. On my Warlock, I have a 30-second interrupt timer, and so I'm definitely going to have to get used to that. And also, with my Warlock, I'm very used to holding my interrupts for the more important interrupts and making sure that I have those available. With a 15-second interrupt, I can really devote more time and spend more time interrupting things, and I need to get used to that because I'm used to waiting. I also recognized during this dungeon that I needed to start using Avenging Wrath and Final Reckoning a whole lot more, because I'm definitely not using those on cooldown. I'm not using those appropriately. Whenever I look, they're up more often than not, in which I think that getting a weak aura will help. So I'm definitely going to be doing that before the next episode. So we ran through the dungeon. It was very easy, and we actually ended up 3-chesting it with no deaths. I know it's just a +2. It's not that big of a deal, but I've very rarely been a part of any mythic dungeons where there have been no deaths. So seeing the no deaths was pretty cool. I was pretty happy with that. So the lead for the dungeon ended up actually getting a +5 Blackrock hold, and he wanted to continue with the same group. I think we lost one. We lost a DPS, and so we had to replace them, but we ended up going into the +5 with them. When we were loading up, what I will say is the first 10 seconds of the Mythic Plus, it's very different for me. I'm used to being on my Warlock where I am spending that time summoning my pet, making sure that they're on defensive and not on passive, and popping my pot. And it's definitely just sitting there for 10 seconds is definitely weird, and I'm not used to it, but I will have to get used to it, right? But we went through the trash and we didn't have any problems with that, and I was doing really well on DPS. But once we got to the first boss, I noticed that my DPS was pretty low. It wasn't the best. There was definitely I was on the higher end of the DPS meter for a long portion of time, but once we got to that single target, I was definitely hurting. I also got soul echoes placed on me, and I will definitely have to learn or figure out how I should place myself so that way I can still attack the boss. I know it's not a huge issue with rep paladins because they do have a little bit of range, but I need to figure out if there's a better way that I can handle that. Then the Restless Souls came out, and I think that we actually only killed one before it got to the boss, but thankfully it's just a +5, so it wasn't that big of a deal. We were able to continue on. As we continued through the dungeon, I guess now is as good of as in any time to tell you the affixes for this week. This week we are dealing with Fortified, Incorporeal, and Sanguine. Obviously on a +5, all we really had to worry about was Fortified, but we kept moving along without any issue. On the second boss, I did not see Dark Rush was on me until a little too late, so the pool was kind of in the middle of the fight. But honestly, I'm not going to lie to you, I wasn't really paying too much attention. I was only paying half attention for these dungeons just because I know how low the keys were. This boss was also the first time that I've not gotten the eye beam on me. Normally I feel like I get it time and time again. Like I'm pretty sure I've gotten it 3 times in a row before. I don't know if that's just an ability that the range DPS have to deal with and melee DPS don't really have to worry about, but it was definitely weird not getting that ability on me and just being able to melt down the boss. We then climbed the stairs and we had to dodge the balls, and just like the amazing pro gamer I am, I got hit by the first one that I had to dodge. Luckily, I didn't die, or I didn't immediately die, and I was able to move along from there, and it was just a small staircase, so we were able to move along from there. We then went on to some trash and we're doing some big AoE pulls, and I will say is that Rep Paladin is super satisfying and feels super rewarding on these pulls. I did feel like I was putting in minimal effort and topping the damage charts. I then, in true gamer fashion, ran up the long staircase, dodging every single ball, and it was one of the first times that I've gotten to sit up at the top of the stairs and wait for everybody to come back down because they all got hit by the balls. I was just sitting there. It was the first time that I felt like a little bit of a high end player. For the next boss, I realized during this boss is that I'm definitely going to have to step up and take the Hateful Gaze. I know that you can only take one, but I'm definitely going to need to be one of the ones that take it first, so that way I can take it again later on in the fight. As a plate wearer, that's going to be your job. I'm used to avoiding that like the plague. I then was trying to go extra for a +5 and trying to run the beams off to the side, and I realized that I was just kind of wasting time because we killed the boss before it ever really actually mattered. And on the final boss, I had a horrible brain fart. I think I was typing in some notes for the video, right? And I was a horrible teammate, and I didn't actually help with the fight for a couple seconds. The boss then went super smooth, and we had no issue with it. My DPS wasn't the best for this boss, so I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong with single rotation, but we ended up completing the dungeon with no problem. So the boss ended up dropping this ring for the healer, right? And I'll tell you what, I was so jealous of this because I've run this dungeon specifically 5 or 6 times trying to get this ring so that way I can move my ring up a little bit, right? And I have not been able to get it. And I swear every single time it drops, but I just have not been able to get it. Sadly, because I'm not in a guild yet, right? My Hearthstone was still on cooldown, so I was that weirdo that just hung out in the dungeon, and I left the group and I was still there. I had to wait for the 60-second timer to kick me out. So at this time, I went and I looked to try to see what my vault upgrades were going to be for next week. And I don't know if a couple weeks ago when I must have ran this character on time walking or what, because I had actually 2 upgrades in the vault that were waiting to be opened. So I went and I opened it, and I had the choice between Triton leg plates, which were a huge eye level upgrade, and I also had the choice between some Zealous Pyrokits Aleti's shoulders, which were still a huge upgrade. I wish I could tell you that I made the decision based off of what I thought was going to be best with the stats and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, the only reason why I chose the shoulders is because I had not collected that appearance yet. I know right now it doesn't really matter what I'm getting. All that matters is an eye level upgrade, but I chose the shoulders just so I could get the appearance. I then spent some of the limited funds that we had to transmog my gear because I'm a scrub that way. I then ran the rest of LFR. It was nothing crazy. I didn't receive any loot, but I at least wanted to cap out the weekly vault. So we ran the second stage and also the final stage and killed Farrak. But like I said, no loot dropped. And also I'm still trying to get that Hearthstone, the new Hearthstone toy. So we didn't get that either, but it did drop. I was then trying to figure out if I should use my flight stones and crests right now to get my eye level up a little bit. But I decided to wait just because next time we open the vault, I want to be able to get the huge upgrade and not waste my flight stones, because I could decide to upgrade my boots, right, and then get brand new boots that are 460 and just completely waste those resources. So at this point, this is kind of going to be the ending thoughts for this episode. I know it's not a long episode, but this itself is taking me forever to do, right? So what I want to do from here is, one, I want to get some weak ores for the Paladin, because I think that'll definitely help me out. I also need to put my own player name tapes on here, so that way it's a little bit easier to see. I also really want to try to figure out a little bit more about the utility of the Ret Paladin, because I know that there's a lot of buttons on my bar that I'm not pressing at the moment, and I don't think that I'm using them in the appropriate way, or I want to be able to use them when it is appropriate. So to recap this episode, we went from level 63 to level 70, and we got to a whopping 427 item level. I know that's nothing crazy, but this, like I said, just getting to this point took a long time. But from here, for the vault, we are going to have one option from our mythic dungeon. We're going to have one 460 option. Then we will also have all 3 raid options from LFR. We are capping out the week at a whopping 158 mythic rating. So that being said, if you're still here, hey, I just want to say I appreciate you. This is my first time making a video in a long time. So if you have any thoughts or anything regarding the video, please leave a comment down below. I would love to hear your feedback. Also, if you're a Ret Paladin, you know a little bit more and you want to help me out, I would greatly appreciate it. And I would love to see your tips and tricks regarding the Ret Paladin. But if you're still here, please leave a like. Please, if you want to see more, consider subscribing. I appreciate everybody that's still here, and thank you guys. Have a good one.